Hello, today I'm in the studio and with me are Jackie and Amber from the Stroke Association. My first question is to Jackie. What is a stroke?
Hello. A stroke is a brain attack. It's where part of the brain becomes damaged. It happens when the blood supply to part of the brain, which carries oxygen and food to the brain, is cut off. And that can be caused by either a blockage in the blood vessels to the brain or in the brain, or it can be caused by a bleed in the brain or around the brain. And then because the brain controls everything that our bodies do, the things in your body stop working properly. And that's basically it.
So that brings me to my next question. Amber, who can get a stroke?
On average, every 3.5 minutes, someone in the UK will have a stroke. And those affected could be a newborn baby, teenagers, someone in the 30s, 50s, even 80s, at any age. It's not an old people's condition.
There is a higher incidence amongst certain communities, amongst the black community and South Asian people, such as Indians. And people are more at risk of stroke if they're overweight, or if they smoke, or if they drink too much alcohol, if they don't eat healthily. And then some people are at risk because of medical reasons, such as high blood pressure or heart problems. But the basic answer is anyone can have a stroke.
Yeah.
So Amber, you've had a stroke and you're young. Why did you get a stroke?
I had my stroke at 19. I was at uni studying psychology in Southampton. I had multiple strokes. My whole body, clots everywhere. Prior to it, I can't remember a week prior to it. I collapsed twice. Really bad migraines. 2 times I've been to the doctors. Numb feelings. Thought trapped nerve and a headache. And a massive stroke. My whole body clots. But yeah.
So Amber, how did it affect your brain?
I lost my right side, my leg and my arm. I'm right-handed. It was a pain, but I learned to write left-handed, and I wear a splint to walk. I have aphasia. It's difficult to speak properly. I was in a wheelchair for about 7-8 months. And didn't move at all. And finally, I eventually talking and relearn everything again, really. But yeah.
So Jackie, can the brain recover from a stroke?
Well, it's different for everybody because it depends on what kind of damage there is and how bad the damage is and where the damage is. Basically, if cells have actually died in your brain, then they don't come back to life. But if they're just damaged, then they can start to recover once the swelling caused by the stroke goes down. And also the brain is just amazingly clever, so sometimes different bits can take over functions that other bits used to do. Sometimes the messages can get round the brain by taking a diversion, so it doesn't have to go through the dead part, it can go round it and get to where it wants to be in another way. That ability, the ability of the brain to adapt and sort itself out and reorganise itself is due to a feature that's called neuroplasticity. And then after a stroke, people have treatments, which Amber obviously did, such as physiotherapy and speech and language therapy to help them recover. That's called rehabilitation. And the aim of that is to kind of boost the brain into finding those different ways of sorting itself out and finding new ways of doing things. So like Amber said, she had to learn again how to do things. But the bit of the brain that used to do that function might not have been working properly.
Reboot.
So it might have been that another bit of the brain had to take over. Or if the message had to go round to that bit of the brain but couldn't get to it directly, it had to go another way to tell Amber to stop moving her leg or whatever it is she needed to do. So yes, to some extent the brain can recover, but it is different according to what and where and how bad the damage is.
Yeah.
So Amber, from when you did have your stroke, how do you feel now?
Now I'm training to be a ambassador for strokes. One day a week in the office for the Stroke Association, campaigning. I finished my college work. I was at college for 3 years studying art and design, mainly for friends, a social life. 3 years later, I finished last year with an AAB, which was amazed, an A level. So I'm astonished and focused on the Stroke Association, getting better, and I still go conversation group with Jackie, the speech and language, and Sharon, my second speech and language, in a stroke survivors group, all with similar problems.
So after like months, or is it years?
Yes.
After years.
6 years ago.
Yeah.
So
So after all these years of like recovering from that stroke you had, does this mean that you'll have another one?
If you have had a stroke, then you are at risk of having another one, but there's things you can do to reduce that risk. So obviously Amber is now on medication, so the things that caused her stroke in the first place, she's now taking medication to help avoid those things happening, the clots. I expect you're taking blood thinning medicine to stop the clots from forming. So that's reducing her risk, and like she eats very healthily, so that's reducing her risk.
Smoked.
Doesn't smoke, keeps a
Healthy.
healthy weight. I presume you don't binge drink or anything like that anymore, or
rarely.
whether you ever did.
Nope.
And then people can have regular checkups, so have their blood pressure checked, make sure that's not going too high because that can cause a stroke. So there's plenty you can do to reduce your risk, which I'm sure Amber is doing.
Yes. Healthy, really healthy.
So I'd like to thank you very much for coming in and talking to me, Amber and Jackie.
It's a pleasure.